everyone. So today I'm really lucky because I'm not just presenting. I'm actually going to get to talk about my favorite comic book artist of all time, and that's Jim Lee, pictured in the right there. So, how did I get introduced to Jim Lee? Well, actually, it was the same way I got introduced to comics. The first comic I ever read was Batman Hush, and to this day it remains one of my favorites. And it was, of course, drawn by Jim Lee, and it is top notch. Still to this day, one of the most beautiful comics, maybe even the most beautiful, I've ever read. So you're going to see a lot of images from Batman Hush here. It's just a visual treat. It's fantastic. Without further ado, let's explore Jim Lee and why I love him so much. Let's get into it. So, Jim Lee was actually born in Seoul, South Korea in 1964. However, 5 years later, he moved to St. Louis, Missouri. And when he moved to America, he actually didn't really speak any English at all. So, what he did was he actually read a lot of comic books and watched a lot of cartoons. Now, when I say read comic books, he actually obviously wasn't able to understand the English language so much, but what he was able to do was he was able to actually understand the story for the most part from just the art alone, and so that gave him a huge appreciation for comic book art, something that would obviously have a huge influence on him as an artist and would drive him to pursue the field that we know about today. In fact, he would follow not just certain books, but also certain artists and their work. He really grew to love the art, and you could tell. So, actually, despite this, he didn't go into the arts initially. He actually studied psychology at Princeton University. However, after he graduated in 1986, he did not go into that field. Instead, he pursued his passion. He pursued the thing that taught him English, that brought him into American culture. He pursued comic books. He actually became a freelance artist at Marvel Comics. And he started off doing issues of Alpha Flight, and then eventually he took over doing artwork for Punisher War Journal. But it wasn't until he subbed in for an issue of X-Men, which was the highest-selling Marvel comic book at the time, that he really took off. Despite only subbing in, fans loved his artwork, and wouldn't you know it, in just a matter of months, he was now the primary artist on that book. And it just kept going and going and going from there, until X-Men #1, when they launched a brand new X-Men series to go alongside the Uncanny X-Men series that was already going. And this new series, X-Men #1, this issue, which you could see right here, had an expanded folding out cover with all of these X-Men, and this is still to this very day the highest selling comic book of all time. And a lot of that can be attributed to Jim Lee's brilliant artwork, along with Chris Claremont's legendary writing, of course. Jim Lee also founded Wildstorm Productions and co-founded Image Comics. But nowadays, he is a DC Comics guy. He is an artist, an editor, and a co-publisher at DC Comics. So, Jim Lee actually, in his co-publishing role and his artist role, actually was in charge of redesigning the entire Justice League when they relaunched their universe in the New 52. Now, as you can see here, Jim Lee, I wanted to put some sketches as well as some finished art, just so you could see how much effort goes in. See, comic book artists, Jim Lee is a penciler, which what that means is he draws everything out like this. They sketch it out, and then they start coloring it in later. But even from the sketches, you could see all of the detail that comes from Lee. It's not just the colors. I mean, the colors help bring it out, but you could see what he's known for is fine lines, right? He's known for all of these little details, the muscles, the movements, the expression lines, all of the things. You see on that one picture of Batman and Nightwing with all of the lights behind them, and then you see its finished product. You could still tell exactly what he was going for. Everything he wants, he gets. You see the shadows, the way he shades certain parts. For example, you see part of Batman is covered in shadows while other parts are in the light. You see the way everything is just dynamic, and the lines and the shading and everything is always made to be visually appealing and visually dynamic. And this is also seen in his character designs. See, he always draws his characters. Being a med student, he has a very strong understanding of the human body. And because of that, he translates that into his work. His artwork, essentially, is an idealized form of the human body. He basically created what I would consider his artwork to be the definitive superhero look, at least in my eyes. The way his male and female characters look, just this peak physical human body, while still also being somehow realistic. And it's great. I really can't say enough about it. And if you look at that picture of Superman fighting that parademon, you just look at all of the detail he puts into every single thing he does. The way the building is collapsed, all the debris you see. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. He just, even before they start doing all the inking and stuff, he makes sure to spend all of this time getting everything he can out of everything. And that brings me to my next point, the fighting. Now, Jim Lee likes to put a lot of emotion into his art and a lot of energy. His panels are always this high-octane energy. You could see lines of force. For example, in that one of Psylocke, you could see all those black lines that, while not physically there in the context of the story, show the force that she is just kicking Magneto straight in the face with, and it is awesome. You see Batman punching Superman, and you just see the expressions on both of their faces, the fury. You see the lines in their face showing their expression and their pain. And then you see other things, like, for example, even just Batman sitting there in the rain. You see the way the rain drips on him and the way it hits him. He always likes to put these details. Or the one of Lady Shiva beating the living crap out of Catwoman. I remember reading that and just feeling awful for her. You really feel the impact of everything. And that's the thing with Jim Lee. He really wants you to feel something. There's always this energy, but they never stop. You always can see the beauty in his artwork. And finally, I want to look at that Justice League Trinity poster. Now, that is one of my all-time favorites. And that, to me, is the iconic superhero look. The Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman position right there, where you have looking up at them. They're icons. They're human, but they're superhuman. Their faces covered in shadows and their eyes, they look inspiring. And that kind of power, that kind of beauty, can only be instilled by the one and the only Jim Lee. Before I leave, I want to ask one last question. Do you believe an artist has the power to create the definitive look of an already iconic, pre-established character? Or do you think it's just another interpretation? Thank you.